Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
Did you hear that?
What was that? Was that your cat?
Yeah. If I close the door, he'll just stand outside and meow nonstop because Catherine's not home.
Well, this is now the opening of the episode. I hope you know that.
Okay. Hey, that's 2 weeks in a row then. I wish you guys could keep up.
Charming or plus sides to doing YouTube, you eventually see Evan's cat. It's not a euphemism. He pays a cat tax. Downside to YouTube, twice a week, I have to look at myself at the end of the day after I'd barely done it all day. I actually make it a point to not look at myself in the mirror too much during, work from home COVID. It gets worse every time. I looked at myself, unfortunately, before a shower the one day. I was disgusted with myself. It's bad.
It's bad. Not like I gained a lot of weight. I just look like a milk bag. Going back to the gym can't happen soon enough because I hate myself more so than normal.
I looked up just a set of dumbbells, dude. Oh my! If anyone listening to this needs some cash and has dumbbells that they don't use 24 hours a day, sell them because they're going for $1 million a pound right now.
Yes.
Also, if anyone can loan me a lot of millions of dollars, then I can stop looking so gross on camera.
Yeah, me too. Once you're done with those, pass them over to me.
Yeah. Brad's fine. Brad took a picture with a listener. And I've only seen Brad from the shoulders up, which is way different than how we would usually see him, suggestively. And I saw him in the picture. I was like, how dare this guy be in shape? That is so goddamn annoying. That's really stupid of you, Brad. I want you to know that. It's rude and it's a personal attack.
My body fat percentage is low due to chasing children around the house. And then in every free waking minute I have where the children aren't almost literally hanging off me or actually running a construction site upstairs, I go to the gym or play hockey. So there is nothing but movement in my life, and I hate it. Do you know how I long for the days of just being able to lay on the couch and accidentally fall asleep?
Oh, that's once a day for me.
I
Easily
hate
once
you.
a day for me.
So you can take the whole, I look in the mirror and I look bad, and then remember your naps and just remember that I resent you.
That's fine. That means nature is healing. Truly, if we're getting back to you hating me, that's like origins of this podcast.
That's fair.
2021 might be all right.
Yeah. I love this.
Love the optimism, Evan.
I love the sounds of the kids bouncing what I assume to be the weights and medicine balls that I can't afford upstairs on your floor.
No, they literally got into business. There is a bulldozer, a jackhammer, about 3 foremen for the large crew of 37 large burly dudes that are surely stamping around my kitchen right now.
Again, no different than when we would usually come over. And on that note, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Self-deprecating, but still here. I'm Ryan Hanna.
Tired, but somehow physically not dead, Brad Crisco.
And I'm Milkbag Evan.
I think that's the second time you've called yourself Milkbag Evan in an opening.
It hasn't changed anything, so I need to keep trying.
Yeah, I really like it. It's very nonsensical but poignant. Believe it or not, this is a Hockey and Detroit Red Wings podcast, and we have a good amount to talk about today, as well as a special guest later in the show. So we're, of course, going to be chatting about the upcoming potential arbitration case between Tyler Bertuzzi and the Detroit Red Wings. I almost said Todd Bertuzzi. We're going to be chatting a little bit more about the Red Wings overseas in Europe. Why did I say it like that? Europe, and potentially, or one that's coming back. And then just some small things, jersey numbers being released, fourth jerseys being released around the league, and then an interview with none other than longtime Detroit Red Wings beat writer and journalist Helene St. So it was a really fun call we had with her earlier today, so we're excited for you guys to hear that. Yeah, full docket today. Funny how even when the news dies down, the news doesn't die down.
Well, that's good because when I was driving home from the patch with the kids today, I was just wondering, what the hell are we going to talk about tonight? And then I checked Twitter. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. It seems, I think that's happened probably 14 consecutive episodes outside of the draft stuff, which we knew would be busy. For the longest time, we're like, we might have to face the truth here and realize there might not be enough to talk about.
Yeah, we'll be down to the conversation of, do we go to twice a month episodes?
Yeah, we've been waiting since 2017. So,
yeah,
the passage of time is something that has changed for everyone. So imagine my surprise this morning when I checked today's date and I saw that it was October 22nd. Tyler Bertuzzi's arbitration hearing is on October 25th. Remember when probably the last time we talked about this seriously, we said, yeah, Bertuzzi and Mantha still haven't been signed. Bertuzzi filed for arbitration, but his hearing's not for a while, so I wouldn't be too concerned yet. Yeah, if you're a big Tyler Bertuzzi fan, and a lot of us are, I think everyone on this podcast wants Tyler Bertuzzi back. He's an important part of this team. Now is when it's pretty honestly fair to be worried. Has the clock run out? No. But we are 3 days away at the time of recording this. But we are doing you a favor because the moment we record this and the moment we put it on record and release this episode is when Tyler Bertuzzi is going to sign. So we're jinxing ourselves for the betterment of the Red Wings. You're welcome.
I'm not worried.
How come?
Because we've seen 2 other arbitration cases get resolved the day of the arbitration case this week already. So it's not uncommon to get right down to the wire. The player uses every last bit of leverage they have, and then they sign. It's not out of the realm. And again, with Bertuzzi, I don't think he's scared to go to arbitration because he's confident in what his numbers reflect versus the player that he is. So he's, obviously not the play driver on that line, but in most arbitration cases, that's not what they look at it. It's comparison. So if not that they're apples to apples, but if Tyler Toffoli just put up 55 points last year and Bertuzzi was on a 55-point pace, he would look and go, well, if he's getting X, that means I should get X. Obviously, shortened season, weird off season, pandemic, money being tight. There's going to be a lot of quirks to it, I'm sure. And Bertuzzi, I'm sure, in his position, is probably a guy who would want a long-term contract. And I know I've talked about that before. He probably needs the certainty more than Mantha does, just because if he gets moved to the second line, he probably loses $1 million to $2 million a year off his next contract if he's not playing on the top line. So I wouldn't be surprised if Yzerman's trying to be conservative with his contract, maybe offering a 4 or a 5-year deal, and Tyler's angling for 6, 7, or 8. It's going to be a complicated negotiation. It's one thing that sucks that Bertuzzi and Mantha are both RFAs at the same time, because both of them are going to be complicated for different reasons. Bertuzzi, because it's very easy to argue his numbers are inflated based on who he plays with. With Mantha, because, well, dude's never played a full season yet, seemingly, but puts up very good per game numbers. So, yeah, Stevie's got his work cut out for both of them, and the Bertuzzi one's going to get resolved one way or another shortly.
Yeah, my thoughts with Bertuzzi, I actually first have to open this by saying there is a contingent of people who are huge on Bertuzzi. And, you know what? I'm not even going to fight people who really, really love Bertuzzi. I really love Bertuzzi. I really believe in his game, and I don't think that he's a risky signing in the way Abdelkader was back in the day. I know we drew a few analogs and comparisons to, signing big money long-term deals in a way where it would hamper the team down the line. And Bertuzzi was used as one of those comparisons. But that was only ever used very lightly as a way of saying, this is a contractor situation where the old guard might have handled it differently. I'm not worried about that really happening with Bertuzzi because A, I think he's a good player, and B, Yzerman historically really, really, really excels at signing players to great value deals. I'm just going to walk everyone through what the arbitration process is like, because I know it can be a little bit confusing. There are a lot of ins and outs to it, but I'm going to talk specifically about Bertuzzi's case here. So there's two different kinds of arbitration mainly. There's club elected and player elected arbitration, and that is basically who's deciding that they want to go to an arbitration hearing to decide an RFA deal. This one, Bertuzzi's, is player elected, so he's the one who filed with the league and said, yeah, I want to have an arbitrator decide. You doing okay over there, Sniffles?
No.
The Bertuzzi is the one who elected to go to arbitration, which means a third-party arbiter meets with the team and meets with the player. They have a discussion. Pretty much, a lot of people imagine it as a court hearing. It's not quite as serious, and they find a number. The player goes in with a number, and the team goes in with a number as to what they want to sign for. And it's as simple as you think it is. The team goes in low, and the player goes in high. Once the hearing has taken place, the arbitration decision must be finished within 48 hours. So we'll know 2 days after the 25th at the very latest. Arbitration contracts, or they call them awards, can only be 1 or 2 years in length. So it's not going to be anything longer than that. Players who are in their last year of restricted free agency are only entitled to a 1-year contract. And players who elected for arbitration and get an award of greater than I think it's essentially 4.54 million. The club can walk away from the salary, making the player a UFA. And if the arbitration award is 2 years and greater than 4.54 million, the club can walk away from the second year of the awarded salary, making the player a UFA at the end of year 1. So a lot of different little nuances to that. Yeah, it gets pretty complicated. In terms of Bertuzzi and his comparables, I really don't know what we're looking at. And like Brad said, there still is time. There's 3 days. It's really, really common for these things to go under the wire. Under the typical system, I think they can negotiate as the hearings are going. I think this year is different, where the moment the hearings start, it has to be the arbitration award. My impression here is that Steve Yzerman, wants to sign Bertuzzi to a classic Steve Yzerman contract. He's used to getting these guys in for cheap. And Bertuzzi might be looking at this and saying, I just had one of my best years, if not the best year of my career, and I need to lock it in now. Not to say I won't get better or won't continue to play at this level, but I want to lock this in. You're going to hear Helene St. James say the same thing later, but Yzerman plays his cards close to the chest, and no one really knows who's making what ask. So it's kind of difficult to glean what's really going on.
And let's not forget, Yzerman's willing to go to the edge of the cliff. It was less than 24 hours before Stamkos hit unrestricted free agency, and Yzerman didn't flinch off his offer because he knows what a player is worth, and he knows that I'm going to sign this player for what he's worth, and if he wants way more than that, well, we're better off without that boat anchor of a contract on the team, and it's the right mentality to take. Do I want Tyler Bertuzzi on this team? 1,000% yes. Do I want Tyler Bertuzzi on this team for hypothetically $6.5 million? Absolutely not. So, and Yzerman knows that. He knows that even if losing a guy like Bertuzzi in the short term, again, he's an RFA. It's not like we're going to lose him, because I don't think he has the arbitration case to the point where it would get so high the Red Wings wouldn't be able to do it. But if they lose Bertuzzi, yeah, it hurts in the short term, but I mean, as teams have proven, you can always replace guys like this. Maybe not to the level of Bertuzzi, but if you get a similar player for even cheaper, obviously not as good, then you fill out the rest of the roster elsewhere, right? Like, especially in the COVID world, there's bargains to be had on players all around. And that's probably the one thing, you hate beating the point to death, but that's probably the one thing that's causing this to be so much more complicated, because an arbiter is going to look at this and go, okay, well, yeah, this player scored 55 points last year. This is about what Bertuzzi made. And when he signed his contract last year, he got $5.5 million. That's that. And Yzerman goes, yeah, well, the guy we just signed who scored 40 points last year, we just gave him 2. So it's going to complicate things further. I hope they come to something before arbitration. But yeah, this is no clear answer. If you told me right now we're going to sign Tyler Bertuzzi to 1 year at like $6.5 million, I'd believe it. If you told me we're going to sign Tyler Bertuzzi to 7 years at $3.5 million, I'd believe it. It's obviously going to be somewhere in the middle, but just with a player in his situation of his skill set and the world the way it is, nothing's off the table in terms of what his contract might look like. I think it's a little more rigid with Mantha because he's the type of player that is much harder to find. So I don't think Yzerman's willing to walk Mantha to unrestricted free agency too soon, which may or may not be on the table with Bertuzzi.
Yeah, and right now that Bertuzzi's let's just make a completely uninformed guess here. Let's say Bertuzzi's ask is he wants a full 7, 8, or 8 years at $6 million. Like he just wants to lock that in, and that would obviously be too much. But for sure that might be what he's aiming for. And Yzerman might be saying, well, you're 25 and I wouldn't mind having you for 7 years, but it won't be at $6 million. We can't have you at that big of a cap hit. He doesn't have a perfect record of signing contracts. I also like the way Yzerman and Brisebois built out their roster in Tampa Bay. A lot of contracts, they made sacrifices on how much they would have given guys, preferably as opposed to what happened, based on dealing with it in the short term. They're like, we're building a contender that's competing in the next 3 years, and in year 4, this will be a problem. Case in point, look at Tyler Johnson. Tyler Johnson's a good player. His contract just doesn't work for Tampa Bay, and especially in this global and economic climate, it's an especially big burden. But it's not like the most abhorrent thing in the world. I think Yzerman wants to avoid a Tyler Johnson situation. He doesn't view Tyler Bertuzzi as, when this Red Wings team is competing for the playoffs and a cup again, Tyler Bertuzzi will be an effective piece, but he's not going to be, a top 3 player on this team. And that's not a slight on him. He's a great player. He's done really well for the team and he'll continue to, but you don't want to be paying a guy top dollar for an extended amount of time when he doesn't figure to be as impactful as, a guy who could be lifting the Conn Smythe one day. I know this is a really rambly way of saying that Tyler Bertuzzi ideally is a middle 6 player and not on your top line, but that's just kind of the reality with it. I think that's just what the two sides are grappling with right now.
Well, the one thing that you can look at in Tampa that, at least from Yzerman's tenure, that you can see is pretty well established in what he does with his contracts. If you are a key piece of the core of the team, so we know who the core of that Tampa Bay Lightning team was: Point, Stamkos, Kucherov, Killorn, Johnson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He locked them all in long term. Not to like egregious overpays. They were all pretty fair, if not under market value, but he locked them all in. And then he just said, screw it, and filled in the rest of the roster with the Blake Colemans and the Barclay Goodrows and the who the hell ever, came along that was cheap to round it out. And people will look at that model and look at where Tampa is right now in salary cap hell and go, there's no way in hell he's going to repeat that, because look at Tampa. They're going to have to give up players to get rid of it. Do you think anybody in Tampa gives a shit right now? Do you think if Steve Yzerman was still the GM of Tampa, he gives a shit? They went to 4 conference finals in the last 6 years and just won the Stanley Cup. It was all worth it. It worked. Yeah, they're in salary cap hell right now. They're fresh off a Stanley Cup. Perfect. Who cares?
That's the exact best way to do it.
If they have to literally trade Steven Stamkos tomorrow to fit under the salary cap and keep their younger guys, they're not going to be that rattled. Yeah, it's going to suck. You have to lose a player like Stamkos, but you can hand him his Stanley Cup ring as he leaves. So we can say whatever we want about like managing the cap and cutting it too close, and now you have to shed players. But if you believe in the players in your core and you know they're going to be prominent pieces of your core, he locks them up. And if you sit here right now and go, Tyler Bertuzzi is going to be a piece of this core when the Red Wings are contending for a Stanley Cup, Steve Yzerman is going to try and lock him up long term. If he's not sold on Bertuzzi as part of this, the long term solution, and he's only been here for a year, so it's very plausible he's not. He might just give Bertuzzi a 1 or a 2 year deal. Who knows? Like, I think the only like if we're being brutally honest right now, I think the only 3 players on the Red Wings we can confidently say would be part of a core when the Red Wings are contending would be Mantha, Larkin, and Hronek.
Yeah, and that's assuming Mantha doesn't get moved.
Yeah, exactly. And we know they have the talent to play on top lines to win games. We've watched Mantha and Larkin drive a line that literally single-handedly won games. We know Hronek, despite only being 22 years old, is a legit top 4, maybe even top 2 defenseman in the NHL. So there's part of your core. Would I bet on Zadina being part of that core? Yeah, but I can't say that confidently yet. Would I bet on Bertuzzi being part of that core? Yeah, but I can't really say that confidently. Again, Seider, Lucas Raymond, go down the list. You probably, but you don't know for sure. The only 3 that I can say I know for sure are the 3 I referenced. So Yzerman's got his work cut out for him. And again, if you want to predict what he's going to do, look at what he's done in the past. And he locked up his boys in Tampa.
Yeah. And with Mantha's a funny one, right? Like, people are talking about 1 or 2 year deal for Bertuzzi, and that could happen. And like you said, Brad, it's not the end of the world. With Mantha, you can't walk him to unrestricted free agency. He's too important of an asset, and he has too much headroom above him, right? Like, we haven't seen Mantha at his full potential because of injuries, but Red Wings fans who know and are in the weeds on this know for a fact just how good he is. You don't let that kind of talent walk in unrestricted free agency. I'm not saying he has to be a Red Wing forever. I actually don't know if he'll be a Red Wing for very long, considering how precarious his situation is. But regardless, if he leaves a team, he leaves via trade. So you don't let that guy walk without getting assets back. Doesn't mean Bertuzzi's worthless, but the pressure is much less so. Of course, the deal that's going to come will come again right after we post this. Lots of time, but even if it does go to arbitration, I'm not too concerned about the deal that's going to be put forward by an arbiter. It'll just be around, league value, and if it's high for a year or 2. And in case you haven't checked the Red Wings cap friendly page in the last little while, they have enough cap space to sign me, you, Evan, and then 15 of our listeners for league minimum and still be comfortable. It's a joke, but kind of not. Okay. The Red Wings in Europe. Bad news. McIsaac's injury. It was a forearm injury, was it? Something to it for his hand or forearm he broke?
I have not seen any definitive anything on what the injury was.
Anyhow, he's coming home to seek treatment in North America, which means he's no longer playing in Finland. He lasted literally 1 shift and now won't be playing in Europe at all. It's bad news for McIsaac. He's been plagued by injury since he's been drafted by the Red Wings. Actually, before he was drafted by the Red Wings, because he played his entire last season with Moose Jaw, right? Not Moose
McIsaac? Moncton.
Yeah, Hamilton.
Well,
Moncton.
he was with
Moncton?
Halifax. Halifax, and then he got traded to Moncton midseason.
Halifax Mooseheads. That's why I said Moose Jaw.
Yep.
He had a lingering injury there, which he essentially played through. So much like we said with Berggren, when he was out, bad time to constantly get hurt. Really bad time. It's, I think, a time to be a little bit concerned for his development, honestly.
It was. It doesn't mean it's the end for him. We were very concerned about Berggren's development through his injuries, and he's popping off just fine in the SHL right now. But yeah, McIsaac doesn't have the talent Berggren does. McIsaac is one of those defensemen. Everything has to go right for him to be effective in the NHL, because he's not the quickest, doesn't have the hardest shot, doesn't have the best hands. He's just a smart player. Now, again, that's the type of player you bet on, because if his shot's not as hard, he can still make it work. But when you miss as much time as it looks like he's going to, especially in these 2 years, yeah, there's no way you're not concerned. Again, it's not the be-all, end-all. We don't know the extent of this injury. I don't know if it's been reported how long he's going to be out yet, but the fact they're sending him back to Detroit from Finland is not a good sign. It is what it is. As long as it's not his shoulder again, which was the source of his surgery last year, it's at least a positive that it's something different and may not be lingering. But it's still a concern. And again, McIsaac was no sure bet to make the Red Wings to begin with. Now he's losing another season. It's an even longer shot. couple that with the fact that when he did come back from his injury last year, he did not put up the same numbers that he did the year before. He regressed statistically, at least. Had a good showing at the World Juniors, at least. But yeah, it's not great, Bob.
In better news for Red Wings prospects, Albert Johansson looked great today. Did you see his deke at the blue line on the power play?
Oh, that was disgusting. Just dancing the line. And that was horrible defending, too. The guy literally swung his stick at him. I'm like,
I know.
But he danced around him like he might as well have been a pylon. It was beautiful.
But hey, if that's a guy with offensive output and he can play the left side, that is fantastic news for Detroit. Furthermore, Moritz Seider met Elmer Soderblom in more than one way and laid him out at the blue line. In case you don't know, Elmer Soderblom is 6'7". Moritz Seider is 6'4". We could hear that hit around the world.
And it wasn't even that big of a hit. It was at the end of a play, and Seider just kind of brushed him off like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, like he literally sat him down his butt. Yeah. 12 feet, 11 inches of Red Wings prospects in that hit.
Oh, my God. I thought that was sarcasm at first, and then I'm like, no, that actually is the math.
Yeah, that's real. Hell. Someone tweeted at us, and they're like, that's the combined height of all three of you on the podcast. And I was like, listen, buddy, Brad brings down the average.
You are like barely taller than me.
The best part of that picture of you and the listener was that he is significantly taller than you. So you just looked like his kind of jacked son.
Yeah, no, Chris is a big boy.
Chris is actually only 5'4", believe it or not.
It's all relative.
Yeah. Joe Velano also is doing extremely well, or at least in the one game, his most recent game, had a fantastic assist on the power play and then finished it off with a very nice power play goal where he picked the corner. So good showing for him and reminds people why he's ranked so highly, third on our Red Wings prospects list.
It wasn't even that he picked the corner on that shot. It's that he corralled the puck and released it in one motion with no backswing from damn near the top of the circle. I had to watch that 12 times just to fathom how he did that. He doesn't have the hardest shot in the world, but if you can get a puck off that cleanly, that quickly, you are going to score a lot more goals than I would have thought.
Yeah, having him or watching him, like you said, corral the puck, move it to a shooting position when his body wasn't even positioned correctly, and get that kind of accuracy and release off of it. It wasn't burning a hole through the net, but he picked the corner. Could there have been a better goalie? Yeah, absolutely. Was there? No, and he exposed that. It was super impressive, especially because people don't really think about Velano as a shooter, but he has that in his arsenal. It's there. So just a really, like, outside of McIsaac, it's just really nice. Like, bam, you cut to this game, this Red Wings prospect is doing well. Bam, you cut to this game, this Red Wings prospect is doing well. Also,
when
a quick
you have
note,
1,000 of them.
Yeah, that helps. A quick note, a lot of people are asking for how to watch the SHL. Very difficult. It's very difficult to do so. A lot of it's through clips. It's really hard to find reliable streams. Not only that, the official service, I think, is pretty pricey if you're a North American trying to pay for it. It's priced out in euros. Isn't it 40 or like 80 euros a month or something?
Holy. Yeah,
it's not a little bit of money. So I apologize that I haven't been able to answer that question. I'll let you know when I figure it out. Some other little news. The Red Wings released the jersey numbers for the 6 newest Detroit Red Wings. Mark Stahl will be wearing 18. Merrill will be wearing 24. Eat your heart out, Chris Chelios. Thomas Greiss will be wearing number 29. Bobby Ryan, unfortunately, is not wearing 69. He's wearing 54. But as Bonk's Mullet pointed out on Twitter, 6 times 9 is 54, so it's a sign.
True.
Stetcher's wearing 70 and Nemesnikov is wearing 92. One number up or down, man, and he would have broken some hearts. Can you imagine?
Oh, well, he's the first Red Wing in history to wear number 92, and I'm always a big fan of when players do that. Leave your mark.
Me too.
Leave your mark. And I'm also very appreciative that Mark Stahl is going to keep number 18 warm for Lucas Raymond.
Christopher N and Brendan Perlini lost their numbers.
They lost their jobs, so
yeah,
it's fine. I'm sure they're not that heartbroken about it. They have bigger issues to deal with at the moment.
Yes, they certainly do. Have you guys seen the fourth jerseys that have been going out? It's like throwbacks.
I can't wrap my head if these are real or not. I've seen the
almost
white
confirmed ones are the Flyers, the Penguins, the Knights, and the Mighty Ducks.
Those are confirmed.
Aesthetics put them out, so I'm taking as a strong rumor.
Okay, so here's my very quick opinion on all four. The Flyers and Penguins ones are atrocities to the game of hockey. They are uncreative and terrible and ugly. The Anaheim one is so cartoony and so stupid. I absolutely love it. And I think the same applies to the Vegas one. I think aesthetically, the Vegas one's a little better. I get the Las Vegas Thunder throwback. I like that they use their shoulder patch logo as a main logo. So I'm here for it. It's fun. Those two are ugly and fun. The other two are just ugly.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. The Pittsburgh one, I don't mind, but yeah, it's kind of uninspired. They're doing like reverse retro or something like that. So it's not exactly as you remember it. They invert some colors. Or for teams like Vegas who have never had a third jersey before, they just make it up. So Philly's like shoulders versus sleeves just ended up looking funny. Pittsburgh's look uninspired. I get that they're not just going to go with what we know, but the Mighty Duck crashing through the ice in teal is so good. The fact that they're doing it, but in orange, like I want to complain, but if you're an NHL team and you're going to have a cartoon Mighty Duck crashing through the ice, like a full on Disney Mighty Ducks jersey, respect to you. And I feel about the Golden Knights jersey as I do about their third jersey. I don't think it looks good, but it's cool what they did in general. And I get why they have to do it. So respect to them. At least it's different. I think there's a lot of red primary color in the league, but whatever. It's still not bad.
I'm just happy teams are doing this. They're having fun with it and not overthinking it. Because like the Major League Baseball of every league, they have the players weekend where they get these, color rush type uniforms and the players can put their nicknames on the back of the jerseys. It's cheesy. It's campy, but it's fun as hell. I see I see people walking around Kitchener wearing the Blue Jays players weekend jerseys. And I mean, I've got friggin' 3 different Red Wings jerseys behind me. If the Red Wings did something goofy, like they did a purple and red jersey with Al the Octopus on it, I'd hate it and I'd buy the shit out of it. It's a league that's hurting. It's a league that's hurting for money right now. What does it cost to create a set of jerseys for your players to wear on the ice? Like $1,500 max. And that's at like full retail if you were buying it like off the shelf. So obviously NHL teams are paying that, but then you can sell it and fans will buy it. A money-starved league in a COVID world needs some fun, needs some levity, needs some sales. Every team should be doing a third and fourth jersey. Now, I'm not saying you need to wear them regularly. If the Red Wings did this stupid octopus jersey once a year, that's enough for me. I'm happy. It exists. I got to watch it. If I want to, I can buy it. It's always there in history, and it's fun. People take crap like this too seriously. Like, the Red Wings jersey and logo is the best in the league. It's storied. All the history behind it is super cool, and I get it. Like, this jersey is a religion. If we threw together a stupid fun jersey, it doesn't diminish this jersey in any way at all. So I'm all for it. I think every team should have a good third jersey and then a stupid fourth jersey, and I'm here for it. It's like the NBA. I cheer for the Raptors. I couldn't even tell you all the iterations of their jerseys in the last 2 years and the upcoming year. There's so goddamn many, but who cares? It's fun.
Ryan, are you experiencing a earthquake at your house?
Oh,
your camera was shaking.
I have my laptop up on a stand, and anytime I use a trackpad, it just
making sure.
Just from time to time, I should go, whoa. I don't know why. I have a mouse right next to me, too. The Red Wings are rumored to be using a third jersey that is very similar to their jersey from the 30s, which is essentially all white with one single red stripe on the sleeves, and then having the red diamond around the C or the A, which I really dig.
other than the C, it's literally just the reverse retro of our red jerseys. It's the exact same design. They look clean. They look nice. Someone did a Photoshop of Larkin wearing one in like full gear, and it looked amazing. So that would be perfect as a normal third jersey. Like, absolute fan of it.
Yeah. I still wish Detroit would do a third jersey. I think at this point, why not? But this counts. This counts as a third jersey. I don't really, like you said, I think a third jersey should be nice. A fourth jersey should be fun. I'm happy teams are doing it. I still want teams to do like the simple throwbacks that everyone would love. Did you see the fake San Jose Sharks one? Someone posted a fake leak that they were doing a throwback to the California Golden Seals.
Oh, I did see that.
Love it. I wish they actually would do that. I'm hoping that jersey got enough traction that the Sharks are looking at it and going, maybe we should do that.
Well, wasn't the Grand Rapids, the Jurassic Park ones they did, wasn't that a contest? Like fans submitted designs and that was the winner?
Yep.
Yeah.
Why don't they just do that?
The NHL doesn't know how to have fun, man.
Hey,
the AHL has to.
A couple teams are doing it now. Maybe they're turning the new leaf. Who knows?
Oh,
Although,
man.
Did anybody else get irrationally excited when Nathan McKinnon posted those blue and white gloves on his Instagram?
Nordiques.
That's fun.
I hope so. Okay, here's what I want to happen, and I know the NHL does not have the balls to do it. If Colorado does wear a Nordiques jersey, they absolutely need to do it in a game against Carolina and make Carolina wear the Whalers.
That's fun as hell. That'd be so fun to watch.
They should do it for a winter classic. Like,
oh yeah,
do it in Colorado. Then you get the home fans, and it could be a true vintage heritage game.
Yeah, tonight, the Quebec Nordiques versus the Hartford Whalers. I don't even really like either of those teams. I would watch the hell out of that game just for the aesthetic.
Did you see what they renamed the Pepsi Center?
I didn't even know they were changing it.
It's either Ball Arena or Ball Center or something, but it's Ball.
Okay, that's
boring. So that arena is going to be known as the Sack for as long as it's named that. Which, like, you can only do so many things. I saw a lot of people, and I get it, they're Avalanche fans, so maybe I don't have the nostalgia around this, but a lot of them were like, I'll only ever call it the Pepsi Center. Like, true fans know it as the Pepsi Center. I'm like, it's just another corporation. Like, that also went to the highest bidder.
How quickly they forget about the McNichol. True Colorado fans, my ass.
I mean, Denver's had it bad enough because they lost Mile High Stadium, but people still call it Mile High.
I didn't know that either.
You didn't know it changed?
Nope, no clue.
I think not too long ago. I'm not sure. Anyways,
I mean, the Bill Stadium isn't even named right now. It's went through like 2 sponsorships, and to everybody, it's still the Ralph.
That's the way it goes. The LCA is the LCA. I still wish they called it Motor City Arena. I get why it's not, but man, you know, seeing the LED Red Wings roof on the mock-ups and just imagining the Motor City Arena or the Gordie Howe place, and then all of a sudden getting Little Caesars Arena and getting the freaking Little Caesars logo on the roof was just a slap in the face from reality that no one really wanted.
I'm just pissed they didn't go all in on it. If they had went Little Caesars Coliseum, I'd have respected it.
Right? The LCC. Just do it. Yeah. Go all out. Why not?
Yeah, the Pizzarena.
Have a bunch of like chintzy like Roman architecture around there. Bunch of columns and stuff. On a more serious note, we're actually going to jump over to our interview here today. We are speaking with none other than Helene St. James, who just wrote a brand new book and, of course, is full of Red Wings insight. It was a really good conversation, so we know you guys will enjoy it. So without further ado, tune into our chat with Helene St. James. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast's first ever interview with none other than Helene St. James. Helene, welcome to the show and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Everyone knows this already, but Helene is a journalist for the Detroit Free Press covering the Red Wings. She's covered our Wings since 1996, has covered all of their previous 4 Stanley Cups, everything from the Russian 5 to the Olympics in 06, 08, and 2014. One of the most storied Red Wings writers of our time, and so it's a real pleasure having you. And Helene, the big story here today is you are now the author of a brand new book called The Big 50 about the Detroit Red Wings. So congratulations on publishing that.
Thank you very much.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about The Big 50, what it's about and how it came to be?
Sure. I was approached in the summer of 2019 by Triumph Books whether I would be interested in writing the Detroit Red Wings book in this series. And of course, I jumped at it right away. And then spent most of the rest of last year, second half of last year, writing it. Especially, in the off season, I did a lot of the research on the teams from the 50s and 60s, and even the dreaded 70s when they were horrible, and some of the great players early on in the franchise, and finished the manuscript up, and then have spent most of the first half of this year going back, editing it, revisions and such. So I'm just beyond pleased with how it all turned out. I think it's crammed with information from opening page to the last, and features a great foreword by Chris Osgood and tons of interviews I did last year with people like Steve Yzerman, Scotty Bowman, Chris Chelios, Nicholas Lidstrom. List goes on, who spent time with me just specifically talking for the book.
That's excellent. And so obviously when it comes to being in the weeds and the nitty gritty about the Red Wings, you'd be hard pressed to find people with more knowledge than you. But that said, with your research and with looking back, was there anything that kind of surprised you or jumped out at you that you maybe didn't know before about the Red Wings?
Probably, as much as I had heard about Terry Sawchuk, I didn't realize really just what a tragic story arc he had. I mean, he died so early, and just struggled with what today, we would probably categorize under drinking too much and depression and such. So, things like that. That was a story that was kind of, or chapter that was kind of hard to write or sad to write. Jack Adams, I certainly knew him by reputation, but just how much wheeling and dealing he did. And it's funny to think about in, contrasted to today, players have so much more power. Like you just, you wouldn't see a general manager. Jimmy D called him a dictator, that just reading about. I mean, it was very interesting. There's a subchapter in there on Marguerite Norris, who ran the Wings for about 3 years after her father died. This was back when they were owned by the Norris family. And as soon as she was pushed out by Bruce Norris, Jack Adams just went about dismantling the team and really upset Gordie Howe, especially, those greats who thought they really could have continued the dynasty of winning cups, but instead Jack Adams traded them left and right, and, that led into the 70s.
So obviously with all the research you did for this book and just all the time you've spent around the Red Wings, if we had to narrow it down to one or two players or people in the organization that you find are a little misunderstood by the fan base, or what they're portrayed like in the public is completely different for how they are, what names come to mind for that statement? Well,
I will say I thought it was deeply unfair how Sergei Fedorov was treated after he left. I certainly know that there were people within the organization who were upset, about the offer sheet and, the whole $50 million offer and such. But the fact is he was a free agent and free to leave. And, in my mind, there's no doubt that his number should be up in the rafters next to the others, and that it should be retired. I mean, he was one of their all-time greats. So he was a really nice person. He is a really nice person. I think, maybe was a little manipulated at a time by his father. Maybe, should have stood up a little bit more. I'm glad that after he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, that he came back and there seemed to be, a thawing of the icy relationship that had been between him and the Ilitch family and the organization and fans. So I think he was, misunderstood, and I don't know how much of it was maybe a language barrier. I mean, there's still, very much, coming over to America to him was, something of a culture shock. So I think, him probably most of all of the ones that I've known. And not that this will surprise anybody, but to me, hands down, one of the friendliest players I covered was Thomas Holmstrom. He just, people know that he spoke what they call the Swenglish, a mixture of Swedish and English, but he was just he was such a contrast to Nicholas Lidstrom in that Lidstrom, never ever got upset about anything, and Holmstrom, if he was injured, you could tell. If he was upset, you could tell. He wore, he was very much more of an emotional player in person, and I think he's just such a great story. And they used to joke he was the only player to come out of Sweden who couldn't skate. And I remember right after he played in his 1000th game, his teammates gave him a snowmobile that he took for a spin around the ice at Joe Louis Arena. So to me, he's just such a great example of what hard work and determination can do for you. And he figured out a way to play to make him invaluable by. They used to joke nobody that he led the league in scoring with his back to the goal.
Helene, I just want you to know that with the defense of Sergei Fedorov, you just became the most popular person in Red Wings media to everyone who regularly listens to our podcast. And for everyone who is listening and does want Helene's book, we will be giving away a copy, so make sure you are glued to our Twitter to see that. And if you don't win it, then you're just going to have to go out and buy it like the rest of everybody else. But I do want to transition a little bit, Helene, from the Red Wings to you specifically, because everybody knows Helene St. James, the Detroit Free Press writer who covers the Red Wings. I like finding out origin stories. So how did you end up in this role where you are essentially covering the Red Wings for a living and for so long?
You know what? After graduating, I kind of thought I originally wanted to be an English professor, but I just needed to take a break from going to school, for the majority of my life at that point. And really, I enjoyed writing, and through people I knew and people I'd met and such, wound up at the Detroit Free Press. And originally, I was much more of a general assignment reporter. They used to send me to New York for 2 weeks to cover the U.S. Open tennis tournament. That was back in the days when newspapers were thriving, and that was a gig I just loved. I used to cover a lot more Big Ten football and Detroit Pistons as well, and so it's kind of focus has shifted and the newspaper industry has changed. I ended up covering hockey, which by far is my favorite sport. I mean, I just think hockey playoffs, I used to scoff like NBA, the whole thing with who's at home, and if a player has certain veteran status, he's owed certain foul calls or what have you. I don't think you see that in hockey, and I just don't think that there's a sport where you're so engrossed right from the first time the puck drops until goes into the third period. So and the players largely, almost universally, are great to deal with. I mean, it was such a great honor for me to especially cover Slava Fetisov and Igor Larionov. I mean, two absolute legends in their homelands, and they couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more easygoing, couldn't have been more helpful. So it was just a really ideal fit, and I certainly was very fortunate to come in and start just as they started winning cups again, and now things have kind of gone off kilter. But it's still, I joke I watched a lot of bad hockey last season, but it was still more fun than anything else I can think of to do for a living.
Oh, that's for sure. It's everybody's dream. Now, given how long you've been covering the Red Wing, like you said earlier, that you started in a time when newspapers were thriving, and now everything is online and social media is such a heavy presence. What have you found has been, in terms of covering a sports team, the best thing for your job in terms of the transition to an online world, and the worst thing?
Well, probably the worst is just, you're always on call. Like there's no downtime anymore. I mean, when early on, we used to have pagers and you could pretend, I'm sorry, my pager wasn't working. Now, so there's ups and downs to just always being available, always being reachable now. And honestly, though, as far as, I find the internet, you can get your message out there so much faster. And I actually really enjoy shooting video. I find it's a good way to give readers, fans a look at players that you can't quite get just by reading, like especially Pavel Datsyuk had a very unique way of speaking, and it just came across so much better in video. Maybe humorous points translate much better in video. So I've really embraced the video part of it. I think that's just such a great way to add to coverage. And like in 18 when Philip Sedina at the draft said, I'm going to fill the nets of the teams who passed with me with pucks. It's so much more charming when you also see him say it, in my opinion.
Now, Helene, the Red Wings fan base has obviously gone through a big transition period, starting with Steve Yzerman taking over for Ken Holland as general manager of the team. That also represented a pretty big shift in terms of the way Red Wings administration operated, at least at a level that's visible to us. Have you noticed any big changes in terms of what it's like to cover the team? And is there a contrast between, the Holland that you are familiar and comfortable with and Yzerman coming in new and fresh?
I think certainly so. Steve plays his cards very close to his chest, and isn't picks and chooses when he talks to media. When he does talk, which he's done a lot this month, just between the draft and free agency, I think he's one of the best interviews out there. He's very, insightful, very thoughtful in his answers, and certainly Ken was too. But Steve, when we do talk to him, is always, always has something good to say. I think, one of the things that stood out to me at the first training camp, so in September of 2019, was the day of the physical. So they hadn't even gotten on the ice yet, and Franz Nilsson saying, "We know we're not his guys." I think at that point it was Filppula, Nemeth, Ernie were about the only ones who could say, "Hey, Steve wants me here." The rest of them were inherited. And I think you really saw much more so, even players like Dylan Larkin and Anthony Mantha, who, were safe in where they stood with the organization, that there was much more of being on your toes and being evaluated. I think you've really seen it with just how many changes. I think it's remarkable what Steve has done in a matter of 18 months. I think something like more than half the players, NHL players he inherited, are gone, and you saw him make a bold move there, in my opinion, with buying out Justin Applicator. I say bold, certainly Justin had not done anything to justify his contract, but 6 years against the cap in buying out, I think to me that was still, a bold decision by Steve. So there's, I think he's making it very clear that he's not going to put up with people who don't perform to his expectations, while also understanding, I know certainly Jeff Blashill has come under a lot of criticism, but I always point back to people, okay, what could he have done about Jimmy Howard, for example? There was nobody else to play in the organization, and he played Jonathan Bernier as much as he could. There's not many coaches who can do something when they have a goalie who struggles to the extent that Jimmy Howard did, and there's no depth. Same with Danny DeKeyser. He's probably at best a good second pairing, but in Detroit's system, because of the lack of depth, losing him after 8 games last season, it really affected their defense. And just all the injuries, they basically, to me, had one line all season just because of injuries or whatnot. But I think Steve has just done a very solid job of, saying you have to perform to a certain standard, but also understanding where the team is in terms of the rebuild.
Yeah, even for us, having years of stasis, stasis might be a little bit of an aggressive word, but maybe not these kind of bold moves towards the end of Ken Holland's tenure. And then just to see what Steve Yzerman has done in the last month or so has been, there's been a buzz around the team and covering it that I'm sure you've noticed as well. It's kind of like it's breathed new life into it. After a tough season like Detroit had last season, do you feel like this is the breath of fresh air or the fire that was needed, and just in terms of moves made at the GM level that the team and the fan base really had to see to kind of get through this slog, not even counting the shutdown of play?
Oh yeah, I mean, I really looking forward to the start of next season. Although I don't know. I think January 1st is very optimistic, and but very eager to see what these recent free agent signings will do. I think just putting Grice and Bernie in there together, having two goalies who look like they're going to be dependable, especially if, I mean, it's not going to be an 82 game season at this point. So if you have 50 games or maybe even less, that you have, so just starting from there, that teammates, skaters have two guys that can look back and say, okay, he's probably going to stop most of the pucks. Having a defense that's just, I think Stahl is going to be a nice addition to. And you know what, to me, I think that Bobby Ryan could be the sleeper signing of the free agency. He's very, very motivated. He's got an excellent shot. Is he the best skater? No, but to me, it's hard to think that he will not make that power play at least functional, which it really wasn't even. I used to joke like, hey, they're going on a power play. We can all take a break because nothing is going to happen except maybe they give up a goal. So I just think in the Nemesnikov, I think, suddenly to me, they go from having at best one line to having enough that maybe they can field even three lines where there's some scoring threat on every line. And that's going to be a significant improvement over, they won 17 games last season and 4 of those were against Montreal. Like that's how terrible they were.
It was, I think, a slog is the right word to describe this past season. And obviously with all the conversations that you've had with Yzerman and being around his first year, I think even though most of the signings were pretty conservative, 1 or 2 year low risk options, the fact that he did go out and sign 5 or 6 unrestricted free agents, if you want to count Sam Gagner, that struck most of us as a little more aggressive than we thought he'd be. And he said the rebuild would take time. But do you think that he is trying to speed this up just a little bit, just to maybe avoid that losing mentality creeping into the team?
Well, it's interesting you brought up Gagner. Gagner is a really good locker room guy as well. And I found it very interesting, Steve, going into great detail about how much research he did on Bobby Ryan and how he was around young players. This is a guy, 1 year, $1 million. That's as close as you can get to a completely zero risk contract in the NHL, right? Like if he doesn't work out, you waive him, whatever, he counts nothing. And still Steve wanted to know, who is this guy I'm bringing in? And I thought it was phenomenal. It said a lot about Bobby Ryan too, that he reached out to Dylan Larkin and said, hey, have you guys accepted losing? This wasn't a guy who was the most coveted free agent on the market. He still wanted to know he was going to a place, where there was a good atmosphere, where there was a good culture in the locker room. So I think these signings, he needed to make the team more competitive, and I think Steve has done a good job of that. Are they? And you brought up, to me, I think it's phenomenal. Like, I think Nemesnikov, getting him for only 2 years and $2 million AAV is actually really good. I think I know he could have gotten more from other teams, but he wanted to be here in the area. Stahl, I know it was a shock for him when the trade came down from what he said, but Steve did point out, you're also selling them, hey, you're coming to an original 6 team that has, an incredible history. So I think Steve has, and just by virtue of who he is, can probably lure more free agents than if you take a team in similar situation as far as how bad they were last season, but put them in less of a hockey market on a team with far less history.
Okay, and just one last question for you here, Helene, and doubling back to the book. Obviously, this is going to be a great read for Red Wings fans, new and old. What's one thing you want them to take away from this, or what's one thing that you're most excited to share with Red Wings fans who are going to pick up a copy?
Oh, just all the people that have influenced the franchise. The ones we know about, but like I brought up Marguerite Norris earlier. Mark Howe was great talking about his mom, Corey's wife, just that how much she put into really. I mean, she really was at the forefront of pushing that. Hey, these players have tremendous value, and making sure that their families were looked after as well. And just, some of the, I love writing the chapter of Bruce Martin. He was great talking about Bud Lynch. So I think just so many of the chapters that aren't about people that, immediately ring a bell, that I hope people will enjoy that as well. I thought Chris Osgood did a great job with the foreword. And actually one of my favorite chapters is the last one, just Mickey Redmond talking about how it's the greatest game in the world, and how he even, when the Wings have struggled so much, just always look for the greatness, and that to me, it sums up the Red Wings, and it just sums up the great game of hockey.
Okay, and again, folks, that book is The Big 50, The Detroit Red Wings by Helene St. James. You can find it obviously everywhere online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, triumphbooks.com, as well as any bookstores that you might be going to. You can follow Helene on Twitter at Helene St. James, and obviously we hope you're reading her at the Detroit Free Press. Helene, thank you so much for joining us. We should definitely do this again, and we appreciate you sharing everything about your time as the Red Wings beat writer and about your new book.
Absolutely. I would be happy to be on anytime. And I just want to add, people, my emails in every one of my stories, if people want a signed copy, a personalized copy, they can also reach out to me directly for that. So it makes a great holiday gift. So
awesome.
But thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course. Cheers. Have a great day, Helene.
Thank you.
And welcome back. That was our interview with Helene St. James. We will be giving away a copy of her book. And to enter, just make sure you're following the podcast, following Helene, although I'm sure many of you are. I think Helene must have 30,000 followers on Twitter. And retweet this episode's tweet from @WingedWheelPod, and you'll be entered. Patrons, good news, you can do that, but you are also automatically entered through your Patreon support. So thank you very much. You get an entry for every $1 you contribute per episode to our Patreon, and that goes for any competition. Also, at the end of this episode, we'll be talking about how to, or maybe hint a little bit more about how to win our next jersey giveaway. One last quick note here. Corey Pronman released his under 23 player rankings. So these are guys taken from 2016 through the 2020 draft. And things didn't go too badly for the Red Wings, but a couple rankings here that I'm curious about. So the highest ranked Red Wing was Lucas Raymond at 17.
Shocking.
Yeah. For context, first overall, the top 5 on this list are Austin Matthews, Rasmus Dahlin, Elias Pettersson, Alexis Lafreniere, and Matthew Tkachuk. Svechnikov coming in right behind. There seems to be a mix here of potential and how they've actually played. It's really difficult to rank such a wide age group across the entire league, so I don't think anyone should expect Corey to be perfect here. The next up is Moritz Seider at 38, Philip Roenick at 61, and Philip Zadina at 71. Philip Zadina at 71 just doesn't sit right with me.
Are these non-NHLers?
No, this is anyone who's under 23. So like Austin Matthews is on this list.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he literally read off the top 5, where 4 of the 5 have been in the league for a couple of years.
I wasn't listening. I was trying to find that list on the fly.
I'll link it to you. I understand that Philip Zadina hasn't had an Elias Pettersson start to his career. He hasn't had a Quinn Hughes start to his career, which seems to be the measure everyone's using for him. But last season was super promising for Zadina. It was good, right?
He was
now he's got to have play a full season.
Yeah.
He was a half a point per game player and half a season playing with gestures broadly at that dumpster fire of a team. He was not playing with Larkin, Mantha, or Bertuzzi for most of his time up. So the fact he was, hovering around the 20-something point mark in 40-something games is insane. That's very promising. So, yeah, I'm still very much on the Zadina train. when you just read off the numbers on Pronman's list, though, it does kind of take out of context, though, just how good the company these players keep.
Yeah,
in these
in
rankings.
fairness,
like,
Corey, yeah.
You look at number 61 with Hronek, and then you look at some of the players around him. Like, I've got it open here, and I just scroll down a little bit. Like, you've got Ty Smith in New Jersey, Nick Robertson in Toronto is behind Hronek, Connor Zary, Eric Brandstrom, Jake Sanderson. So he's keeping these players, I should say, way late in the 60s and 70s are keeping very good company. It's not like you drop off to absolute schlubs when you get down there. Like Lucas Raymond at 16 might seem low, but Pronman's basically got 4 or 5 drafts worth of players here, and Raymond is the 4th ranked prospect from the 2020 draft. So it's right about where you would expect. And
yeah,
another way to look at it too is, well, there's 31 teams in the league. So if everything gets divvied up easily, okay, well, we have the 16th best number 1 player under 22. And again, that's not even prospect, just player under 22. And then when you do the second lap through Seider at 38, okay, well, that means we have the 7th best second player. And then you go to Hronek at 61. Oh, we've got a bonus one in the second round, essentially, right? So it's all relative. And given that the Red Wings probably have the youngest group of 4 players, or damn near the youngest group of players on this list, is promising too, because it's easy to say we don't have an Austin Matthews. Okay, well, Austin Matthews is 4 or 5 years older than Lucas Raymond. So we have those extra years of Lucas Raymond that Toronto's already burned. So, I mean, the Red Wings are in a great spot. And I think, I still think Pronman put Zadina way too low. I'd have had him based on where he's got people in his list in like the 30s or 40s, because I think he's right there with Seider personally, but obviously we're biased as all hell. But yeah, I mean, it's nitpicking at that point.
Yeah, and it's like the tiers here are important. Like there's only one person in his top tier listed, which is generational / special, which is Matthews. 3 guys are in special, which is Deline, Pettersson, and Lafreniere. And then special to elite goes from 5 to 10. Elite which starts with Quinn Hughes, goes from 11 down to 15, which is Tim Stützle, which leaves Kirby Dach and Lucas Raymond as the first 2 in elite / high end. So really, if you're thinking about it, Lucas Raymond is 2 spots away from moving up into the elite category. And this list very much takes into account that players can still grow. So Lafreniere is 4th, but he very well might jump Pettersson or might jump up to the generational level. Or, for example, Quinn Hughes is currently elite, but if he keeps this up and continues to play at this level of hockey, he'll probably move up into special / elite. So the tiers are important. Moritz Seider falls into high end, and Hronek and Zadina fall into high end / very good. So like Brad said, a lot of guys to consider. So the tiers are important to consider. I'd still have Zadina higher, but yeah.
Like if you look at just, for example, the tier Pronman has Seider in, that tier also includes Nick Suzuki, Adam Fox, Alex Holtz, Alex DeBrincat, Bowen Byram, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Jamie Drysdale, Samuel Girard, Podkolzin, Batherson, Chychrun, Askarov, Carter Hart, Alexander Romanov, Cole Caulfield, Marco Rossi. So again, there's a lot of really, really, really good young players in the NHL. So it's not again, don't get attached to the number. So even if Zadina truly is 71, that's one, he's still means he's going to be a ridiculously good player.
Okay. Without further ado, do you guys have anything else before we jump into overtime?
Yeah, the PWHPA just got paid.
Oh yeah. Tell us about that.
Not first, but one of the major steps for women's hockey with, the PWHPA, which is the coalition of women's players who are essentially trying to get the NHL to get involved and give them a sustainable league while putting on like a traveling tournament to give these players exposure and to give the fans of women's hockey something else to watch if they do want to see, the Megan Augustas and Mary Philippe Poulins of the world playing. In the meantime, they just got sponsored by Secret, the deodorant company, for $1 million. So considering that the PWHPA is only a few hundred women, that is significant investment, and hopefully one of the first major steps to getting something in place for these girls.
Yeah, really huge and really surprising considering money's tight right now. So very, very important, and really happy. Keeping women's hockey alive and the drive to get women's hockey, established, is a difficult one, let alone in a pandemic. So really, really great news. Okay, we are going to head over to overtime, and this is a midweek episode, so this will be a Patreon exclusive overtime. Our patrons are the reason why. We can even have the conversation about doing the show twice a week with no end in sight, which we love to do. And your local Winged Wheel podcast patron is the reason why that can happen. We're going to start with Craig Gathright, who says, "Howdy WWP, hope all is well in the North. Just wondering if Brad could give us his thoughts on Wallander as a prospect."
Very raw, very, very talented. A lot of refining to do in his game. If everything goes right for him, like a legitimate possibility, top pairing defenseman. Just because of his skill sets, his skating, his passing, his transition game, etc. But he's got a long way to go to get there. You are literally betting on the tools right now because his overall game still has a lot of warts in it. And hey, but those are kinks that can be worked out. It's just, will they?
Cody Stark says, "Trivia. Before signing Troy Stetcher, who was the last North Dakota alumni to play for the Wings? Hint, one-time Stanley Cup champion and absolutely hates Babcock." Oh, Mike Commodore.
That was the only guess I had.
Yeah, he went to UND.
I mean, the absolutely hate Babcock. I don't think Johan Franzen went to Nodak, so yeah, that'd be the appropriate
Was it Mike
guess.
Madonna? He also hated him.
No,
it was
Madonna
actually
played
Mike
for
Babcock.
Prince Albert.
You're weird.
Yeah.
Alternate universe. Oh, this is a good one. Alternate universe med school student Ryan Hanna. Don't let my parents, if they ever listen to this podcast, wouldn't be listening to this.
Just
far.
say hi, Mom, and that's all you have to say.
Yeah. Hey guys, just wanted to say how much I appreciate you. It says a lot that I chose to become a patron during a pandemic as I started grad school. What even is money at this point? Well, despite your name, I appreciate you too. All right, enough of the sappy shit. Brad, I want you to give your reasoning for Patrick Holloway over Cooper Moore or vice versa in great detail.
No.
Slava Gerasimchuk, I'm so sorry, man, says, asked about McIsaac's injury in Finland. I believe, again, it's his hand or forearm. Nothing's been officially confirmed, so I don't want to speculate too much. And I don't have any sources on McIsaac, unfortunately. Dylan Krill says, "Hey guys, I've been watching some of Tuomisto's games last year, and I really think it can turn out to be a big part of the rebuild. What do you think his projection is, and what do you want to see him improve the most at Denver when and if the season starts?"
So, Tuomisto, much like Wallander, still a project. Still, again, he was the U20 MVP in Finland last year, but most players of his skill level would have already graduated to the top league, but it would have screwed up his NCAA commitment, so he couldn't. So if everything goes right for Tuomisto, again, probably a number 2-3 defenseman who quarterbacks our top power play because his offensive instinct is what makes him special. Am I fully confident he's going to reach his ceiling? Absolutely not. 99 out of 100 prospects never reach their full ceiling. I think reasonably, Tuomisto will project as an average 5-on-5 defenseman, can chip in some offense, good passer, good transition game, and really, really helps with the power play. I think his offensive instinct's so good. If he makes it to the NHL, he will be playing on a power play. So all you're hoping from him is that his defensive game gets good enough just to at least keep him in the middle pair and keep him from being a liability. So if he's a number 4 defenseman and a number 1 power play guy, I think that's a pretty reasonable projection for him right now.
Yeah, stop me if you've heard this one before, but massive right-handed shooting defenseman who skates really well. Like, that's a great base to work on. Like Brad mentioned, awesome offensive game. If he can work on things like positioning and working on cleaning up his defensive game, which I think comes with time for a lot of people or a lot of young defensemen. I would love to see him as a right-handed shot challenge the top 4, challenge to be a top pairing guy. You know, work with or work with Hronek to be the right-handed shot on that top pair. But yeah, it's another asset on the power play if he pans out, especially. Jeff Lehman says, no question, it's just been 11 months since I've been to a live hockey game, and I'm sad about it. Yeah, me too. I try not to think about that too much. This is a big one. Disco Sludge says, all right, boys, the draft is over, and because I'm used to things being awful, I decided to go through Ken Holland's draft history and be upset. Maybe you can talk me off the ledge, but Ken Holland and his scouting staff were absolute dog shit when it came to not only identifying high-end talent, but even finding NHL caliber players. Tried to narrow it down on the most egregious misses, but the list is kind of long, so strap in or strap on. 2005, Kindle taken 19th over Oshie, Cogliano, Niskanen, at 24, 25, and 28. Abby taken 42nd over Paul Stastny, 2 picks later. 2006, Corey Emerton taking 41st over Petrie, 45th. 2008, Tom McCollum taken 30th over Markstrom, the next pick, and Roman Josi, 38th. Max Nicastro, that's a name I haven't heard in a while, taken 91st over Braden Holtby, 93rd. Ferraro taken over O'Reilly. Sheahan taken over Kevin Hayes and Kuznetsov, Coyle, and Brock Nelson. 2011, Yurko taken 35th over John Gibson, Brandon Saad, Xavier Ouellet, and Ryan Sproul taken over Nikita Kucherov. 2015, Evgeny Svechnikov taken over Ilya Samsonov, Brock Besser, Travis Konechny, Anthony Beauvillier, and Sebastian Aho. As you can see, Ken Holland doesn't know how to identify talent, and I'm not backing down from including goalies in there, seeing as all of them are current NHL starters and how he retired. Also, if we learned anything from Pittsburgh, Columbus, and the Rangers, it's that you can never have too many goalies. I understand drafting is mostly just nonsense and hoping for the best, but that is way too many misses to blame on chance. Holland simply wasn't a good scout, and his reputation is way more inflated than it should be. Also, he's a massive hypocrite, seeing that he always talked about build through the draft and develop homegrown talent. You can't build through free agency and trades. Then he traded all our futures away for aging veterans and give massive contracts to free agents who weren't all that good. Thanks for reading this. I'm mad. Also, in Brad's defense, Pivris, is that how you say it?
Paris.
Oh, you can understand why I was confused, because the V is a V and not an A.
Yeah, it took me a while too.
They frickin' rule, and I saw them at Warped Tour a few years back. The big point about that list, not that this part's irrelevant, but for me, it's not the players that came after. That always happens. I mean, that's an egregious amount, but that always happens. It's that these were all high picks, relatively. A lot of them were high picks that they whiffed on.
So I blame some on Holland and others I don't. And even Steve Yzerman has already said, like, he gets kind of involved in like the first round pick and maybe the early seconds, but beyond that, he leaves it in the scouts' hands for the most part. And then you factor in just how scattershot everything outside of the first round is. Obviously I didn't love all the picks that Holland made outside of the first round, but I try to not hold those ones against the GM, and I even try to not hold them too much against the scouting staff. If over the course of 10 years you get 4 NHLers out of the second round, like assuming you have 1 pick per year, you're average. That's fine. So the Red Wings did hit some damn near home runs outside of the first round. I think Mrazek was a 5th round pick. Athanasiou was a 4th round pick. Gus Nyquist was a 4th round pick. Tatar was the last pick of the second round. So they had their hits outside of the first round. So it's easy to say, well, yeah, Nikita Kucherov went late in the second round and everybody who picked ahead of him in the second round, they failed. Knowing what we know about Nikita Kucherov, he's an argument for first overall that year, which means every team passed on him almost twice. So it's hard to really, really pin that one down. It's the first round misses to me that are inexcusable. If you were going to swing on a goalie in the first round in Thomas McCollum and literally the next pick was Jakob Markstrom, who has proven to be a far better goalie, that's a huge miss. Jakob Kindle over Oshie and those guys, huge miss. I mean, I was a big fan of Svechnikov going into the draft here, so I'm not even going to, like, I was wrong on that one, but looking at who went behind him, huge miss, because even before the injury, I don't think Svechnikov was panning out to be to the level of those guys. That friggin' 2017 draft that's going to haunt us forever, where we had double-digit picks and we might get a third liner and a number 6 defenseman out of it, considering that third liner came in the top 10, is inexcusably bad. I'm with you. Like I was starting to sour on his draft record like a couple years ago, and then just like you, the more I look back at it, the worse and worse it gets. And we can look at 2018 and go, amazing. They finally had a huge draft, but man, Zadina was the no-brainer pick where they picked him. Joe Velano was the no-brainer pick when they picked him. Berggren was the no-brainer pick when they picked him. They literally had 3 damn near elite players fall into their lap, and all they had to do was not overthink it. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think we did tend to overinflate Holland's draft record because of, I mean, people still reference the Zetterberg and Datsyuk picks over 20 years later as why the Red Wings are a great drafting team. And I won't even get into the Datsyuk story, how ridiculous it is. But yeah, I'm pretty much with you on this one.
All right, we're going to move along to Cameron Mugford, who says, my buddy thought I was crazy for this prediction of the Wings next 5 years. This coming season, awful, probably bottom 5. Owen Power, please. Following season, improvement, probably still bottom 10. Lottery gods, please give us Shane Wright. 3 years from now, in a battle for a playoff spot all year, either miss or first round exit. 4 years from now, playoffs, win a round or 2. 5 years from now, legitimately compete for the cup. Am I too optimistic on the timeline, or do you see this having any chance of coming true? Thanks, guys. Love the show. The only thing there where I think you might be getting a bit ahead of yourself is legitimately compete for the cup. Taking that last step to Stanley Cup contender is hard, but again, that's about the timeline that the team's looking at.
I mean, teams turn it around quick now. Let's take the Hawks, for example, because they basically went on a 10-year dynasty run there from about 2008 to 2017-ish or whatever it was. They were one of the worst teams in hockey in 2005-06, and then they won a Stanley Cup 4 years later. They had the benefit of a first overall pick, but, I mean, the circumstances weren't all that different. They were a gutted, terrible roster. They accumulated a ton of picks, hit on all those picks, not all of them, but on a lot of them, and then turned it into a modern-day dynasty. So would I bet on the Red Wings being a cup contender in 5 years? No, probably not. Is everything lining up to make it very possible? Yeah, absolutely. As long as Raymond, Seider, Zadina, and these guys pan out to what we think they might be, it'll turn quick.
TJ Nasty says, hey guys, regarding St. James's article from a little earlier today, it's very difficult for a player to go from draft straight to the NHL. Zetterberg, Datsyuk, and even the perfect human had to play in leagues prior to the NHL. I know we're just guessing at the future here, but do you think we'll get lucky over the next 3 drafts and have someone do just that? One of these kicks at the can got a hit, right? Thanks for all you do. Side note, sign Duclair. I'm not indifferent about Duclair. I still think he'd be a good signing. I'm not like banging the table anymore. I think Detroit's made a lot of signings, and at this point, I'd prioritize trading for a bad cap hit. And whether the team gets lucky depends on whether they win a draft lottery, if they're going to have a guy jump right away.
Well, according to Dom Lucian's model, the Red Wings added the most value of any team in free agency this year, like full end statement. Obviously, that's with
relative to their,
because he basically boils players down to how many wins they're worth, and based on everything that's transpired so far, the Red Wings have added the most wins with the players they've added. So it's a good sign. So I don't think they're in any hurry to go out and get more free agents. And not that I believe them, but the rumors around Duclair's effort level and stuff like that, and why he clashed with Tortorella in Columbus, doesn't strike me as Yzerman's type of guy. I mean, when he's that skilled, if you can get him cheap, you should do it. But whatever, I'm not holding my breath on that one. And I forget what the first half of that question was.
Michael Berry says, so with Tyler Bertuzzi arbitration coming, that gives us another chance to buy out a player. Still hoping we can get something. Islanders, Andrew Ladd, 3 years at a $5.5 million cap hit if bought out, or Boychuk, years of $6 million cap hit if bought out. I think he means trade for those guys. Is there anyone you guys want on the Red Wings to be bought out?
Like currently,
Neil,
who's actually on the team right now?
Yeah.
Franz Nielsen, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like the extra 3 years of a buyout that we would have with Nielsen are only, I think, 600 and something thousand. So yeah, we don't really get a ton of savings in the first 3 years, but he's not doing a ton of anything on the ice, so who cares? So yeah, I would do that if we had the option.
And if you were GM of the Red Wings, what would have been your offer for Winnipeg's 10th overall pick? Mantha's on the table there.
Knowing if we were talking right before the pick,
knowing who was there.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have done Mantha. I like Perfetti's upside, but he, again, as I've stated many times, he's probably the guy I was least confident in the top 10 of actually reaching his ceiling, as high as it might be. I would have probably offered up one of our better prospects. I probably would have taken Zadina and Seider off the table, and literally any other prospect plus would have been there for me.
The next 2 first-round picks I wouldn't have dealt, though, because those
I'm not
warranted to be higher. Picks. Yeah, better than 10. RC Tendy says, so ready for the season to start whenever that is. I can't wait to try Al's barbecue place so I can get some WAP, wings and pussy, wings and pizza. My brain. No.
You better not edit that out. Don't be a coward.
I can't.
Don't be a coward.
Wings and pizza.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I need that forever.
Oh shit.
I figured that was a typo.
No, he wrote wings and pizza, but my brain was like, no, you're saying this.
My goodness. That's amazing.
Brad's daughter came downstairs at that very moment, so I don't even know if he heard it. Oh man.
Nope, I caught none of that.
Oh, that was a legendary moment.
You'll have to go back and watch. Wings and pizza, boys. Get your mind out of the gutter. I thought honestly,
Ryan.
I was ready to look at Evan to see him perk up.
At first I thought I didn't hear you right. I was like, there's no way you just said that. And then you started laughing, so.
What are you guys thinking the timeline will be for when Larkin is named captain before the season? Probably within the next couple months. And then he just says 69.
Nice.
Did Evan look up from what he was doing? No, he actually didn't even look at the screen, so sorry. But I'm sure you got a kick out of me reading your comment. Rob, man, that's my biggest slip in a while. Rob Byram said, hey, all, hope you're doing well up there. It's been a tough year full of stress and anxiety, but I've managed to lose 10 pounds so far on my way to 25. I've been eating well, but I think it's time to fire up the smoker and make some comfort food. What would be your choice of the 3? Ribs, wings, or brisket? Ooh, wings all day. I'm a sucker for
man,
good
that's
sauce.
so hard.
Yeah.
Gun to my head. Brisket. But man, do I love the other 2 as well.
Yeah.
I gotta go wings.
Yeah, I'm a sucker
totally
for
get that.
Good flat with a good sauce. There's a garbage place in town, and our uptown, where they just had the best Caribbean jerk, and it was a wet sauce. 45 cents a wing. WAP running through my mind all night long. Yeah, man, I feel that. Rip to all the hopes we had for Bobby Ryan, number 69. But seriously, I feel like Kirill Tuchev should get more talk. I know he's in a really weak league, but he's never talked about. We don't talk about him much. He looks solid. 2 questions. What do you think about the concept of Anaheim and Vegas, which we chatted about? Also, if you had to add or change one color to the Red Wings jersey, what would you add for a third? I think Brad's talking about a purple Al the Octopus jersey is amazing. I would love that.
I would, if we're talking for our cartoony 4th one that I was referencing, that would be the one. If we're talking about like adding a color to a legit 3rd jersey, not that the whole jersey should be silver, probably not, but just like a good one with some silver accents or whatever you want to do with it. There's a lot of potential there. I know people are going to be all on the Black Wings jerseys train, but I've seen those, like, I don't know what they call them, whatever, the black knockoff jersey that floats around now. They look awful. I hate them. So I hope that's not what Detroit does. But yeah. As long as it's fun.
When the Centennial jersey came out, I really hated it, but then I really grew to love the silver accent. So yeah, I completely agree on that. I see blue. He looks glorious. Says, hey guys, I've been a listener for a while. Fairly recently became a patron. Thank you, and welcome to the Dub Dub family. And says, this is my first time submitting a question. Be gentle. First of all, thank you for providing something to look forward to in this dumpster fire of a year. More so than ever, it's important to not take for granted things that bring us positivity, which is something you do twice a week for all of us. I appreciate it greatly. That means a lot. Thank you so much, and I hope you got a kick out of my Freudian slip just now. Anyways, I have a couple of questions to toss your way. Now that you got me hooked on cap friendly, it seems it's becoming more difficult for cap strap teams to escape cap hell. Tampa and the Islanders are the two that jump off the page. Fewer and fewer teams are now able to offer cap relief, maybe just down to the Wings, Ottawa, Jersey, and the Kings. So it seems that those two teams are probably going to have to pay a serious premium. That said, what would you consider reasonable given the lack of leverage they have to demand for taking on a contract like Johnson's or Gord's or Boychuk's, given they agree to waive whatever trade protection they have? I'm thinking a first, second, and a decent prospect should be the asking price. Is that too high?
I would say that's too high because the one thing with the guys in Tampa specifically, and the one little bit of leverage Tampa has, is they're good players. Their contract sucks, but the players themselves, when you put them on your roster, are going to make the team better. It's not, if you were taking something like Andrew Ladd's contract, yeah, that's the asking price all day, every day, probably even more than that because it's horrible. I would think if, just use Tyler Johnson as the example, yeah, he's a good player. It's still a bad contract, so obviously it requires a sweetener. I would say a first round pick plus like a B-level prospect, so not anybody staggering, like if they threw a first round pick in Mitchell Stevens or something like that just to fill out the bottom six in Detroit, that would be fair. It's a bit rich of a contract, but he's still a usable player.
Secondly, if I told you that Dougie Hamilton was willing to sign with Detroit at 7 years times $8 to $9 million next offseason, would you pull the trigger, given where the rebuild would be and the fact that right-handed defensemen is considered the organization's strength at the moment? Thank you.
So after this coming season, 7 years by how much million for Dougie Hamilton?
8 or 9.
8 or 9?
Years old.
Yeah, so he'd be 28 at the time.
That's tough.
7 years, that's 35. Yeah, I wouldn't, especially when you couple it with the fact that on the right side of the defense, the Red Wings have Hronek, Seider, Tuomisto coming through, a couple of years of stature, maybe extend him. Not that any of those guys are as good or will be as good as Dougie Hamilton, but I'm not paying a guy $8 million at 35. I just...
Two more years of near prime hockey, 2 more years of maybe still really good, and then after that you get to some pretty steep drop-offs. I don't know. I consider it, but you'd have to be confident the cap is going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
La Plata Peak says, I was going to leave a comment, but after reading Disco Sludge's research, I kind of want to just draw myself a bath and plug in a toaster. Third man in says, assuming the Wings pick a D-man of next year's top D-man heavy draft, their biggest missing piece going forward is arguably a true 1C, and it's unclear how to get one without winning a top 2 or 3 pick in the draft lottery. How much might this limit their ceiling exiting the rebuild? I mean, not every team gets that premier piece. That's the best possible thing to get out of a draft. A premier franchise number 1 center. Very few teams do it, but teams can still win the cup without him. You essentially have to hit on a later round pick. Braden Point, for example. I know that's been brought up a ton. For example, that's probably what the Red Wings are aiming for in Niederbach. Not that should be his expectation. Please, for the love of God, don't set that bar for yourself. But that's essentially your option. Larkin's not a bad first line center to have. He's just not a top 10 first line center. So if you can't get one either later in the draft, you have to build out some really solid center depth behind that. Andrew Hadel says, gentlemen, was gone for a short time, but happy to be a patron again. Welcome back, Andrew. Any reviews on NHL 21 yet? I'm waiting till the PS5 comes in to play it, but then I'll be streaming. We'll be doing some actual streams with you guys, which will be fun. Also, I think Evan just needs to pay you guys to do the podcast full time. We know he's a closet self-made millionaire and does the podcast to fill his time when he's not golfing. Yeah, Evan. Is there a cat behind you?
He's on top of my lap because he's being annoying.
Show him. Cat tax. Hi, buddy.
He's being a real dick right now.
All this time talking about Fred, I legitimately had no idea he was a black cat. I thought he would just be your standard tabby.
Yeah,
same.
Big old black guy.
Joe Falzone says, say Zadina and Raymond played on the same line. Who would you want lining up on the left and right? Both are listed as right winger, but Zadina plays his offside and Raymond his strong side. I understand positionless hockey is the thing, but I'm curious what you think anyways.
I'm pretty sure Raymond usually lines up on his offside too, but I could be wrong because I think Raymond is
just the
listed.
Power play?
Yeah, he is listed as left wing in some areas. So If you're going Zadina on the right side, Raymond on the left side, or vice versa, I mean, assuming he becomes good enough, the literal perfect guy to put between them is Joe Velano. Like, he's that two-way defenseman who can pick up the centerman who could pick up the slack for them defensively, but is a good playmaker and can distribute the puck to them in the offensive zone.
I would want Raymond, who I think is a little bit more of a mobile playmaker, on the left side because he can move to the right side if he needs to. Zadina is the trigger man, not to discount his playmaking skills, but Zadina is the trigger man. I'd want him exactly where he's the most comfortable. That said, I'm fine with the inverse as well. The towering behemoth Leviathan says, which Red Wings draft was worse than the 2000s? The 01 and 2015 drafts stick out to me. What are your choices? And how about that Seider-Elmer collision? The thunderclap heard around the world. Brad's 2017 note.
Oh my God, 2017 is going to haunt me forever.
The 1920 Upper Trilogy Hockey Deck Cleveland Wedges says, now that Brad is irritated and Evan is paying attention, which is exactly what happened. At what point do we drop the charade and fully embrace it? This is a Swedish hockey podcast. When watching, I find myself tuning into that guy who just wants everyone to do that, or turning into that guy who just wants everyone to do well and not get hurt, and the final score is meaningless. Also, I think we felt the Mo Elmer collision here in West Michigan. Yakaruta says, so McIsaac has returned to Canada to seek further treatment. Played one shift in Liga. It's apparently something to do with his arm. On a level of 1 to 10, how worried should we be?
7.
7.5.
Alarm bells are vibrating.
Evan gives it a firm 6.9.
Yep.
Stevie's Yoga Mat says, all right, before I rip into Pie Boy and Beer Boy, what's your 2 favorite genres of music? Bradley, my boy, don't let these 2 clowns antagonize you. Punk and indie are where it's at. What's a few of your favorite bands over the years that are still a bit hidden?
Oh, man. So I talk about Paris a lot. Icon for Hire is really good. I'm big into Hands Like Houses. Have been for a while. Anchor. Anchor spelled with a K for whatever that's worth, because God knows everybody. No bands can ever spell anything properly anymore. Trying to remember what else I'm listening to right now. I got a lot on the go. I'll stick with those.
I'm one of those losers that listens to literally everything. Like, I saw my 2020 top played, and I had multiple pieces from the same classical music symphony, yeah, I guess, and hard trap rap music. I'm weird.
You listen to everything but rock.
I listen to a lot of rock. I really like rock. I think modern rock is shitty compared to classic rock, though.
You're a Jack White guy, right?
Yeah, I really like
Jack
Jack
that's
White.
what I
Modern
thought.
rock dickhead.
Yeah. He's the exception to the rule, right?
You are the walking stereotype, Ryan, and I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. If you've never heard of Microwave, check them out. Drove from the west side of Michigan to Saginaw, where the Wonder Years were playing in the Spirits side room off the arena. Microwave opened up for them, and they've been one of my favorite bands since. Anyways, done rambling. Please redirect my Patreon bucks solely to Bradley's until you two get some taste. Thank you.
Yes.
Refuse. Tall F. Pumpkin says, greeting from the Gulf Coast where it's still 85 Fahrenheit. Half of folks think the virus is a hoax and there's no hockey in October. Reminiscing of my pilgrimage to the Joe during its final season a few years back where the Wings got shut out by Boston. But my dad and I had fun. I think Evan and I were at that game.
I was just thinking.
That game sucked.
I think that's the game where we didn't talk to each other the entire time and we just left.
Yeah, it was the third period when we looked at each other have we said anything?
That was I think they played Florida the night before and they sucked too. It was the worst.
God.
I was when we had the 10-game ticket package and there was 6 games in a month.
Brutal. I've seen the Wings play several times in Dallas with mightier lineups with far better outcomes. Question you might have answered before: what were memorable games that you've attended? Thanks for the hockey talk year round, boys. Let's go Red Wings. We were at the last playoff win.
The last playoff win. That was probably the most intense game I've been at live, just because it's not even that it was the last playoff win. The game itself, the context of it was crazy because Detroit had lost the first 2 games to Tampa. So they were coming into game 3 and it was essentially do or die. Detroit found all their inner 90s hockey passion because they were just clubbing Tampa for the first 35 minutes of the game. Just all over them. Tampa didn't even look like they belonged on the same ice somehow, and yet it was 0-0. So when Athanasiou popped in that clapper to open it up, man, that place went nuts. That was also the game, too, where Ryan almost fainted when Athanasiou tried the double spinorama.
Close, man. So close. It would have been such an amazing goal.
Yeah, that was a crazy, crazy game. And the only other, like, real significant, I guess, game I've attended was actually in Toronto, and I was in the building for Darren Helm's only career hat trick in a 4-2 Red Wings win. That was late in March. That game knocked Toronto out of the 8th spot and put Detroit into the 8th spot. It was the salt in that building that night was amazing.
Stay Fresh Cheese Bags of Fournier Company asked about McIsaac. Is it fair to label him a bust yet? Probably not yet, but he does slide down the depth chart or our rankings quite a bit. Dude doesn't know how to protect himself. In reference to the Holland picks, his staff is guilty of expecting top round picks to just automatically pan out while expending time and resources evaluating prospective talent in the later rounds. Maybe it will all be worth it when Otto Kivenmaki finally bursts into the league and takes it by storm because he's looking really good despite being 5'7", and you can't convince me that's not his real height. Evan, 69, still waiting on your dreams juice roll. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
Stay Fresh Cheese Bags. Anyone else playing the Final Fantasy VIII remaster? Terry says, good day, Duds. Broke AF Terry here. Will somebody tell Brad to turn the heat up? The basement's sitting at 13 Celsius.
Yeah, it's cold down here.
Evan Pardo says, what are your expectations for the Red Wings prospects who are projected to make their respective World Junior rosters? Who is projected to make their...
Sweden's going to have a ton. Like, Jesus. Yeah. Lucas Raymond, Niederbach, Wallander, Berggren. Wait, no, Berggren might have aged out. But I think when Yoki posted his Swedish projection, there were 5 Red Wings on it. So it was Wallander, Johansson, Raymond, Niederbach. I forget who the 5th was now. Finland had Tuomisto and Viro, I believe. Master Simoni's got a real good chance of making the U.S. No, I guess Seider will probably play for Germany. Yeah, actually, yeah, he's in the SHL. SHL teams usually loan out the players for the juniors. So, am I missing anybody obvious?
We'll probably have to revisit that question in depth in like an actual episode topic. Last question is from Josh Terrell, who says, gents, I recently saw a signed David Booth Red Wings picture, which begs the question, what's the most useless piece of memorabilia you've ever come across? You guys answer this. I actually have something. Let me go get it.
Most useless piece of Red Wings memorabilia? I mean, I've got an autographed Madison Bowie game used stick upstairs thanks to, I think it was Everett.
Do you have any Eric Cole memorabilia as well? That could be fairly useless.
I do not.
So my mother, who I don't deserve and loves me dearly, went to like a random like a flea market kind of thing, and there was a person there who had these extra wide like templates of like stock sports photos, and you can get a name or whatever you wanted printed on them. And she was like, Ryan loves the Red Wings, so I'm gonna get Ryan Hanna printed, and I'll show you guys. It's Red Wings from. Like it's my name across the middle. It's super wide. And it's got the major Red Wings like Datsuk, Howard, Zetterberg, whatever. But it's also got I think that's Weiss. It's got Kyle Quincy. I'm trying to see who else it has. It has Jonathan Eriksson. It has Jakob Kindle. Daniel Alfredson is actually on there. Mike Modano. Yeah. Yeah, the fact that it has Kyle Quincy, I'm like, this was not a great year of Red Wings to like immortalize into this thing, but it was such a nice sentiment from my mom that I'll never get rid of it. I'll probably hang it one day and it'll be super funny. I can't lie though, it does nothing in terms of like in a room where I have a signed Datsuk jersey and a bunch of other memorabilia from you guys. It's a little lower down the depth chart for sure. Okay, we are going to wrap this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. Someday we'll have an episode that's not, an hour 40 plus, but not today. Thank you to all of our listeners, our patrons, name level sponsors, Terry, R.A., Brendan Lee, Zach Spring, Citizen High Five, Cody Stark, Greach, Jeremiah Dobo, Jake Kiefer, WAP running through my mind all night long, Andrew Bohan, Scott Martin, Jacob Turner, Matt McKay, Craig Kibble, Brandon M, Matthew M. Rice, Luke Johnson, Kalen Wood, Hassam Al-Qassem, Arjun Shankar, Charlie Elkins, Hana Lee, another former junior goalie turned golfer, Trevor Pevavar, Evans Bingo Card, Michael Alsante, Ashley Van Conant, Connor Leighton, Matthew Keeler, Rob Rasso, Simon Anderson, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags of Fournier Company, Antonio Gracias, John Evans, Quaz, and Stan Olsen. For our next jersey giveaway, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. Make sure you're following the 3 hosts. Like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Details are to come. Stay tuned.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.